So, Connell, you've been very quiet. Do you have any stories that you'd be willing to share with us?
Tell them about getting your pelican.
Oh, I could tell about getting my pelican. We were at, what's that, 25th, and the preparation for 25th took a lot of time.
Yeah.
And
The SCA-wide 25th year celebration.
And I had spent a fair number of weekends going up to the site and helping to clear the site and get it prepared for the 25th year celebration. And then we spent a lot of 25th hauling T-shirts around and stuff like that, because she was the Kingdom Treasurer at the time, and so she was in charge of the T-shirt concession for the entire event. And so
we had to do cash pickups every day. And I couldn't have done it without him.
We also were in charge of quests for the event. And we put on pretty much a quest each day. And for each quest, we always had one major prop, and that was a keg of beer. And lots of other kinds of props and things that we did. But that meant that we ended up with a lot of beer.
It's only 3 days. We only did 3. It was every other day.
That's right, every other day. But we did end up with a lot of beer.
Yes.
Because not sure that we would have extra beer from the quest. We also, of course, got some beer of our own. And so most of the way through the event, we came finally to the All Kingdom Court. And as I said, she made me shave for it, so I suspected that something might happen.
Well, every kingdom, they had decided among all the royals that each kingdom would make a pier at that all SCA-wide court. And so each kingdom had to make a decision who to make a pier. Well, I was already a pelican, so I, of course, knew what was happening. But he didn't know what was happening, except I told him he had to shave, because he had this,
it wasn't this long.
But he hadn't shaved all week, and so he looked kind of like just scruffy. I was like, now you got to shave. So he knew something was up, but he didn't know what.
But then they called me up in court, and they gave me a pelican. But we had been so busy, and we were doing things so hard that evening, after they gave me a pelican, instead of celebrating, everybody went to bed. And I went wandering around looking for somebody to celebrate with.
And that was when Rowan was queen in her own right at that 25th year celebration. So Rowan is the one who made him a pelican, which was kind of cool.
I would love to gather some Rowan stories.
And we had, because that's when I didn't know you very well, and I was trying to talk myself into buying that intaglio amber laurel.
Yes.
They had an intaglio, I'm saying that wrong, amber pelican, and you were like, don't tell anybody. And I'm like, you told me so that you were like, should I get it? I'm like, yes, you should get it. I won't buy mine, right? But I'm telling you to get it. Yeah. But we bought them. I got the laurel, and she got the pelican for him.
Yeah, so Alessandra and Connell have matching laurel pelican, and they're engraved in amber, basically.
And that's the one you've seen it, because that's the one I wanted to put on my Viking swag belt that you sent me the amber for. That's what
okay. Okay. So you're telling me you never strung it?
I haven't got the little crimpy thing.
Alessandra!
Sorry.
You're supposed to string it and make it pretty.
I'm a bad person.
I wore mine for many years, but then the little latch thing finally broke
Connell's
off.
Connell's the little thing that it attaches by came out of the socket. So.
Okay, you could probably take it to a jeweler and have that.
Yeah, I haven't figured out how to make it so that I can wear it again.
I only have one story about Anburn, and it's not my story, and it's from Old Ottenbelt Reunion, because Rosamund Chazan, who was my roommate in college, had gone to that, and she told me about this. Anburn McFarlane was the Star Principal Herald, the second Star Principal Herald. And he was tall and lanky and had the most wonderful resonant voice. He was the best voice herald I personally have heard, even though he will tell you Baldwin of Erebor was. So I loved Anburn. He was a friend of mine. So apparently it rained a lot at Old Ottenbelt Reunion. And
that's why we call it the Rain Union.
People were taking refuge in the bathrooms, hence the Privy Council. And she's sitting there and she's looking, and nobody's off. She's new to the society, and she's wondering that no one has offered her a seat. And there's Anburn sitting on the a counter, and she looked at him and said, and she's like, and he was complaining about the wet or something, and she's like, well, at least you've got a seat. And he looked at her. He said, in the sink. And he was sitting in the sink of the bathroom. So that's all I know about Old Ottenbelt reunion, but apparently there was a privy council in the privy.
Well, yes.
So I got to meet Master Corwin at Onsteora 40th year in person.
Corwin Arenine?
Yes.
Yes. And I had previously communicated with him and built him a wiki page, but we'd never met. And he made a point of finding me at 40th year so that he could shake my hand and we could meet in person. And that was quite delightful.
He found me at 40th year and ran over and was effusive and hugged me and all sorts of things. And I had no idea who it was. It was one of those, I'm sure I'll remember in a minute. No, I'm not going to. He finally had to tell me because I could not. I hadn't seen him in 30 years.
He looks very different now.
Yes.
Yeah, I've seen his pictures online. Now, Corwin Arenine, there is an entire tale poem that Mari wrote about Corwin Arenine being my butler that we really ought to get to you because it's pretty priceless. It's like, yeah, we really should. We really should get her permission and put that up.
By the way, Corwin was herald for a lot of the events when I was king.
Yeah.
And he had memorized the text on every of the normal scrolls.
Oh, wow.
Because very often we'd have court outdoors by candlelight, whatever, and you've been to events, there's a lot of wind at night. We used to go far into the night with events anyway. But he knew the thing, so he'd stand there with the scroll and recite it, putting in the names properly and give it out. He was just our automatic award of arms or grant of whatever, he just...
Yeah, he was a very good herald too.
Yeah, I have a picture of him heralding on his page. We were talking about earlier before you guys came on about having pictures on people's wiki pages and someone said that they weren't comfortable with a modern picture of them. And I'm like, look, we have pictures of people that are 30 years old. We have a picture of Corwin heralding in court. That's the picture on his wiki page. And I met him because somebody had been talking about how he was made a master and how that all came about. And he's messaged me privately. He said, no, that is not the story. I will send it to you. And so we have his version of that tale posted on the historian's records, which was pretty cool.
How stories can mutate over the years.
Oh yeah, they absolutely do grow and change and shift, and that's why I love being able to talk to original sources. That's what the wiki is all about, is having people who were there, who witnessed it themselves, get to express and share those stories. And I'm going to take just a second to say, hi, Christy. You came in and you've been really quiet, but I wanted to make sure that you knew you were very welcome, and we're glad that you're here. But I just wanted to say, yeah, that's why we do what we do. It's why I'm hosting these, is to just try and provide a way of people connecting during separation and quarantine, and B, to make a very big kingdom a little bit smaller, getting to see people face to face and getting to hear some of those really old stories. I'm hoping to follow your idea, Alessandra, and invite people, like specific people of, hey, this night so-and-so is going to tell a story about whatever. As these maybe kind of grow and happen more often. But we'll see.
I have been after Jan to write down for me because he has told me once or twice the lineage of his belt and the lineage of his chain.
Ooh.
I don't remember, and they both go like back into the distance. And like Arthur?
Well, yeah. See, I had intended, because it was one of those, an old belt with a lineage, and I intended to pass it on to Ricardo when he was knighted, but he couldn't fit into it. You know, it was just too small for him, and it was, you know, kind of a hopeless case. But yeah, it was originally worn by Duke Arthur, who was the second king but first duke of the kingdom of Atenvelt, as they say it. And then Chorus wore it, and he was the first Ansteoran to be a king.
But wait a minute, Chorus was bigger than Ricardo.
He was later on.
I can't even imagine Chorus being small. That doesn't compute at all.
Well, he was there and agreed that he had worn it. And Jonathan, when he was a knight and king of Atenvelt, gave it to me. And it's an old kind of scruffy, beat up belt. I used it in wars and tournaments and stuff. And nowadays, whenever anybody's knighted, you know, they always, you know, I got to give my squire my belt, you know, so, you know, I'll keep the one with history, which used to be, you know, passed on to just people who you deemed worthy, you know.
Well, the right person will come along for it. But your chain, then the one you took a link off of?
Yeah, I had Chorus, when he moved out of Kingdom, had actually gone to several people and given them chains and stuff and links from his chains. But he had made a point of giving me the chain that he used regularly. And I had, for the first several years of the kingdom, given a link from Chorus's chain to all the new knights. And knights in those days, you'd find them with a little stray link on it. Some of the older knights, you might still find it. And I did that until I couldn't get it over my head anymore.
We've still got it. It's little.
Yeah.
Yeah. You hear about laurels giving leaves, and you hear about pelicans giving blood drops, but I very rarely hear stories of knights giving links from their chain anymore, not for a really long time. You hear it from older times, but nowadays that's not something that I've heard happen a lot.
Oh,
That's
well,
okay. In the older times, we didn't give leaves and blood drops either, so I guess things change.
Originally, like, you know, I think it's gotten kind of out of hand, but as you've heard me say before, the knights and the landed nobles were the only ones who really swore fealty. And then you could have personal fealty on top of that. And the knights got a lot of attention out of this, you know, and they thought, well, you know, we really ought to, as a gesture, this was talked about in belted circles, to the other orders. And you know, when somebody was knighted, you know, they called the knights up, they, you know, did that. And they started including in, you know, will a member of, you know, the other peerages speak for this person? And usually speaking for them meant, yes, this person, as I am a laurel, this person is worthy to be a peer of this kingdom. That was it.
That was it.
You know, now, I mean, what, at 40th, that one poor lady, because they put her on her knees and she was kneeling on a concrete floor. Well, 2 laurels, 2 lions, you know, a couple of the rose, you know, I mean, and they didn't.
And each peerage,
say this person is
a lot.
Like,
they gave speeches. And I mean, this was a popular lady and it was on her home turf and it was 40th year. I can see that. But she shouldn't have had to kneel on concrete for all these bloody speeches.
No.
I mean, the things, you know, I met this person when they, you know, we're knee high to a grasshopper and blah, 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 blah. I mean, people just go, we had one down here in Bjornsburg a while ago, and people just went on and on and on. And
Some people.
it really, court ought to be the king's business,
We
and
need a
it ought to be
royal-
dramatic.
A royal
Well, if I can finish.
stop thing.
Yeah.
My word.
But what Bryony
Hourglass.
mentioned about Connell, we did, all this sort of speechifying took place that evening.
After.
We would go on till
Mhm.
morning sometimes, and we would be speechifying then, not in court. Court is supposed to be solemn king's business. And it should be fairly dramatic, and it's hard to be dramatic when you have a whole string of speakers.
Yeah.
You know,
Because after a while, it doesn't matter how good they are. It just gets boring.
Yeah, you just tune it out.
and people want to be, they want to, nowadays it's so many people want to speak for somebody, and people want to be spoken for. And yeah, the way they do vigils can detract from the event. If you have in Bjornsburg, they tried to do a themed event, and a guy who didn't get a vigil had his vigil, even though he already had the peerage. And people kept wandering away from the event to go to the vigil, and it's become a separate thing. And
Yeah, but the food is usually pretty good.
it's excessive pandering to the,
Kasha and Michael have both told me, if we ever are in line for a period, just give it to us. We don't want to do any of this. And I'm like, yeah, okay, got it.
and I really wish they'd tone that down. And if they're gonna do it that way, let the person sit down or at least stand. I mean, this putting everybody on their knee. I mean, yeah, they kneel down so it's easy to put the medallion on them. Got it. But to kneel down to listen to speeches, no, Anyway.
You can tell this is nothing he feels strongly about. He just wanted to throw
Well,
it
no,
out.
this is
Like I said,
heresies. I'm forever.
45 minutes. I can tell he's passionate about it.
It's worth repeating.
Understood. As one of the only people present and active that is not a peer, it's certainly something that you always think about. My SCA experience only started 18 years ago in Onsteora. My first event was before that, but it was a different kingdom, and then I didn't participate for a long time. So Onsteora, I've only seen it the last 18 years. And so that experience of a peerage ceremony, that's the only one I've ever had.
Well, it was an interesting moment at Bringelad's 25th. Recently, they had it in that replica of the Globe Theater. So we're all sitting in the stands, and there's a stage, and I think that's when, I don't remember who it was, but there were much speeches going, and Kasha is sitting next to me and is snarking because it's long. And she's not snarking loudly, she's snarking to me and being very funny about it, by the way. But some lady next to her, because she made a comment about not being able to hear. And some lady was just turned and began to lecture her on, you don't understand, this is important, and this is about them and all that. And she's like, can I say something back? And I'm like, no, you shouldn't. But the lady was flat wrong, because when you do something in court, the reason for doing it in court is to do it publicly so the kingdom can witness it.
Mm-hmm.
And if the kingdom can't hear it, don't do it. These people that come up and like, no, go up there and yell. I mean, people need to be able to hear. If possible, turn and talk to the populace.
Yes.
It's just, that's
I'd have
why.
my heralds repeat it if the populace couldn't hear it when I was king.
Yeah.
Well, when we were inactive for a while, and when we first came back, they made a pier. I think it was a Pelican, and I hadn't been at a peerage ceremony in 15 years probably. And they called all of us up there, and then they had us circle around from the crown here all the way around to there, and it completely cut off.
Yeah.
They left just one little aisle for the candidate in their procession to come up. But then when they got there, it completely cut off any view that anyone not up there had. And thank goodness now a lot of the peers, we've talked about it, and a lot of them now sit down and
Yeah.
otherwise get out of the way. But I was appalled at that. It's like, how boring. I mean, this is boring enough.
Here, look at our butt. Yeah.
Let's make it more boring by putting a wall of people between the populace and the crown and the candidate. It was just, where did that come from?
I got to see a peerage ceremony when I think I'd only been active for maybe 4 to 5 years. And it was one of the few where it wasn't announced in advance. They were going to do it right then and there, that minute. And there were virtually no Ladies of the Rose at that event as it occurred. They'd gone home already because of travel arrangements or whatever. And it was sad because I heard the only Lady of the Rose that was present turn to one of her friends and say, well, I guess I have to speak for this person, but I don't know them. I guess I need to.
Why does a Lady of the Rose have to speak for anybody? That I don't understand.
Because it's tradition.
It's tradition, but that was a tradition that got established sometime.
Either.
Yeah.
Lions had their own special niche, and it wasn't part of a peerage ceremony.
That's right, yeah.
It was peers makes sense, but beyond other peers doesn't compute for me.
It was the other peerage. It was somebody from each other peerage circle would speak for the person. That's all it was to begin with.
Fellow peers. That made complete sense.
Like when I was knighted, well, Ansteora's first war, the first war we went to after the name Ansteora was there, we had a brand new first prince. Ottenville knighted, called 2 people out of the massed army, called them forward and knighted them on the field.
That's cool.
That was done medievally. That was cool. I went to the Crown tournament in Tucson, and I beat the guy who had just stepped down as Prince of the Outlands around the field and showed I knew how to fight. And Jonathan was king and was well disposed to me anyway. And they were just having court, and he whispered to Chorus and Dennis of the Titans, who are 2 big men. And they just smiled, walked across the field and grabbed me and carried me to the king. I'm not that big. My feet were off the ground. And he asked me if I'd accept knighthood. Of course, the kingdom was so bloody big, I mean, you can take it now, or the next time a king shows up in Ansteora,
be a while,
might be a while, It's kind of, there's a luxury. I'm not saying it. Sometimes springing it, for the moment, like I say, knighting people on the field of battle at a war is cool.
Yeah.
So knighting a person.